There's a great story, a made-up story, a fictitious story about a man who one day received 10 apples from God. One day a man received 10 apples from God. The first 3 apples were given to the man so that the man could have something to eat. So God gives the man 3 apples, and he eats the 3 apples, and he's completely satisfied. Then God gives the man 3 more apples and says to him, use these apples in order to take care of yourself in terms of food, in terms of shelter. And so the man takes these 3 apples and he trades them in, and he's able to build himself a shelter in order to protect himself. Then God gave the man 3 more apples, and he gave these 3 apples and said, use these in order to take care of yourself in terms of your clothing, in terms of your warmth and your comfort. So the man takes the 3 apples and trades them in and gets himself the clothing that he needs. Now he has everything he needs. He has food, he has shelter, he has clothing, and God gives the man 1 more apple and says to the man, now give this apple back to me in thanksgiving for everything that you have received. But the man looks at this apple, and it is a great big apple. It's a shiny apple. It's a luscious apple, bigger than all of the other apples. And as the story goes, the man took and he ate the apple and then gave the core back to God. Quite often, that's what we do in our lives. We get very caught up in all of the things that we have to do. We get caught up on our commitments in terms of time. We get caught up when it comes to our treasure. We get caught up when it comes to our talents, and sometimes when we are called to give those things back to God, we say, I can't do that right now, but I'll give this tiniest little bit. I'll give the core back to God. But we hear in the gospel today Jesus say that we are to give everything of who we are back to God. And so maybe today on this 29th Sunday in Ordinary Time, we might ask ourselves, are we giving ourselves completely when it comes to our time and our talents, our treasures, or are there ways in which we're holding back? Are there ways in which we're storing something away so that only we can have it later on because we're not willing to give it up someplace? There are many ways in which we do that. We do it sometimes simply by the way we live our lives. There are times when we have an opportunity to share our faith, but we don't want to quite go that far. Or even when it comes to attending Mass, for example. It's said that in our faith and in even other faiths as well, I know about 30% of our parishioners go to Mass on Sunday. 30% of 1,400 families go to Mass on Sunday. That's giving back the core, not giving back the apple. But of course, I'm preaching to the choir. You're all here today. But we could ask ourselves the question, what are we doing to encourage others, our friends, our brothers and sisters, our neighbors, the people around us? What are we doing to encourage them to give that whole apple back to God? Or when it comes to things that we do ourselves, where are we holding back? Where are we saying, I've got to hold on to this treasure of mine, I've got to store it all up because I don't know if I can give it up? The message of the gospel is very clear. There's a portion that needs to be returned back to God, and we who are made in His image and likeness are called to return that image back to Him who created it in the first place. So maybe today we can consider that. Ask ourselves if we are doing that. Ask ourselves if we're giving ourselves completely to God, or are we storing the pie away? Are we giving God the entire apple, or are we only handing back the core?